I'm always flexing. Mama said that baby safe in those streets. I said, Mama, I got the second with me. The second. Black like Maggie's trying to take a whiskey. I don't think that they would really want me. There's no attention, less government. Man, my man is the plan. They think they tricky, but I can't see what's in their hands. Just release, go eat a dick. Cause we ain't no fans. I'm gonna go be a hard worker. You can go be his friend. But I'm a motherfucking proud boy.
What up, dickheads? It is your friendly host, Dick Schwetz, doing an update on my Thinking with Your Dick show. Today we're going to talk about something a little bit different. I'm going to get off the politics subject for a sec because I have an urgent matter I need to bring to the attention of everybody that's watching me. So please allow me for a second to play a bit of a podcast that I did. I was going to try and upload it onto my YouTube channel and then you guys could listen to it from there. But I can't figure out how to make audio into video. I can make video into audio, but I can't do the reverse. I can't figure it out. So I tried a couple times. I failed. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to play the podcast through a speaker, and then I'll pause it as we're going through, and we'll talk about the reason why I'm doing this podcast is because of a man named Eddie McDevitt. Eddie McDevitt, 37 years ago, was arrested on charges. He went to a bar, got drunk, got into a fight with a gentleman at the bar. The gentleman wound up dying from the fight. They went outside, they fought like men. The guy wound up dying from his injuries, and Eddie was originally given a $3,000 bail and charged with involuntary manslaughter. Once they found out that the actual victim of the crime was a retired police officer, it turned into a murder charge, and Eddie's been doing time ever since. Mostly every single person I speak to, including some people that are in Harrisburg that work in this department where they handle commutations, stated that Eddie McDevitt should have been released probably 32 years ago. But Eddie's still sitting. Currently, he's in SCI Dallas, and I am fighting with everything I got to try and get the man out of prison because he's not supposed to be there, but also because Eddie McDevitt played a key role in trying to save my life. So I feel like I owe him, and I'm going to do what I can to try and get him out. So we've gotten to the point now where we've actually expedited his application for commutation of the sentence. Basically, that means they're going to wipe out his sentence, say he served all of his time, and release him. But that's just expedited to the point where they'll hear it. It doesn't mean that anything's going to happen out of it, and 90% of the time for state prisoners and for people that are doing the type of time that Eddie does, they're usually denied. So I don't want to make this seem like it's a surefire bet, but I would appreciate the people that watch my videos and the people that share my videos if they could kindly share this video out for sure. This one is really important to me. Try and bring attention to Edward McDevitt's case. He's in the state of Pennsylvania. Department correction number is A as in Apple, M as in Mary, 9709. He loves to get letters from people. He loves to have outside communication. But I really looking for is people to write a letter of support for this man. And after you listen to my podcast, you can determine whether you're going to support him or not.
His prison experience, where he is now.
Let me update what this podcast is all about. So a couple months ago, well, actually several months back, a friend of mine, Proud Boys, had done a podcast with a guy that runs a podcast called Felony Friday. And John Oderman, that's his name, really good dude. He's the host of the Felony Friday podcast. And basically he picks up stories of people that have experienced some sort of injustice. Excuse me, let me get this thing. My shirt turned into a schmedium. He picked up stories about people that have experienced extreme levels of injustice, and he tries to bring attention to those matters in hopes of getting some sort of prison reform and alerting the community as to the wrongs that are committed with some of these people. So I heard my friend do this podcast. It was really well done, and I really enjoyed this guy's podcast. I listened to several more of them, and I wind up sending him an email. And the email wasn't just about me and my experiences, but it was more in regards to trying to bring attention to Eddie's case. So in agreement to do his podcast, I agreed that I would give up some of my story as long as he would broadcast some of Eddie's story. So this was the final product that was released. I just cut out, there was about 10 minutes of advertisements and like a question answer for other podcasts previously. So I cut that part out and just included the stuff about me and him talking. So not to be rude, but I would love to put this up. If somebody's watching my video knows how to create, how to convert a audio file into a video file so I can put this entire podcast up on YouTube, that'll be awesome. But here we go.
Advocating for his friend Eddie McDevitt, who was in prison for accidentally killing a former police officer during a bar fight. This is a great show. Please share it around, guys. Thank you for your support. Hope you enjoy the show. My guest today on Felony Friday is Rick Schwetz. Rick actually reached out to me a few weeks ago. He wanted to...
All right, so now you hear it on the podcast, and you see it on my name, and now you understand. I wasn't fucking around. That's actually my fucking name. And trust me, Nazifa has already found it, and I think that was one of the reasons why it took them so long to dox me, is that they just didn't believe it. You know, they had doxed me weeks before that, but they refused to give my name out, and now I find out why. They still haven't put me on the official website either. Come on, Paul Mitten, get on that shit, racist Nazi.
Advocate for his friend, Eddie Mack. Eddie is currently serving a life sentence in prison for a tragedy that essentially, from my understanding, resulted from a bar fight. So we'll get into the details about that and why Rick is so passionate about advocating for Eddie's release, for his clemency. Before we do that, we'll talk about, learn about Rick's story, learn about his past and his time in prison. So let's get started with that. Rick, welcome to Felony Friday.
Thank you, Rick.
I was actually thinking about skipping this, but I'm not sure how far I have to go up in front. And I think it's important that people that watch my podcast know a little bit more about me. I've been pretty open about everything, but this is as open as I've ever been publicly about a lot of the experiences. And this is about 1% of all my experiences.
Much for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, well, thank you for coming on the show. And whenever people reach out to me, I do get a lot of emails and people with different stories. I was... Honestly, when I read it and you explained what had happened with Eddie, and I think it's something that it's important on many levels. I think the focus right now on compassionate release and clemency and everything around COVID is really around nonviolent criminals, right? At least that's what I've seen. Maybe I'm wrong, but with Eddie having the violent crime, I'm interested to really talk about that case, learn more about it, learn about your friendship with him, how you guys know each other, and go from there. So, but before we get to that, so my audience can learn about you. If you could just kind of share with us, about your. I know you did some time in prison, a couple years. Share with us, really the run up to that, what your life was like, how that played out.
Sure. So my name is Rick. I'm originally I'm an immigrant to the country. I immigrated to the country when I was 2 years old. My mother smuggled me in, literally. Left me at an orphanage, and I became a citizen when I was about 13 years old. So
wow.
I was already in the system at like 2. Mom was a little cruel on me. She left me at an orphanage. Apparently I came from Germany, which I just found out about a year ago. But when Mom left me at this orphanage, it was mostly Haitian Americans in the middle of Brooklyn, New York. So they weren't prepared for German butt, that was for sure. Nobody spoke German. Nobody knew anything about me because my mom didn't leave any information about me.
How old were you when you found that part of the story out, or did you know that growing up?
Well, I grew up in the orphanage basically from about 7. So I got adopted when I was 7 years old. So I knew a lot about me, but I didn't know much about where I came from, and nobody could explain it. It's a big void there where a lot of people know, your mom, your dad, where you're born at. I didn't even know my birth date. Like, my birthday wasn't really technically my birth date. I was celebrating the wrong birthday, the wrong year for my life. I was actually a couple years older than I thought I was, which is...
This is all true. It just recently I had to update everything. My country of origin, my date of birth, everything. My identity basically was changed, which caused a lot of issues. One being that I can never get a passport again. Well, I can't say never, but right now I'm ineligible to get a passport, and my American citizenship is no longer recognized because, fuck them, Frito.
I was always struggling in school, but about 13 years old, I became a citizen. I got myself legalized, but I was already, experienced the system in some aspects. Being through from 2 to 7, you're in a different type of foster care because you don't have paperwork. You're not a legal citizen, so you can't be adopted out. You couldn't go to the regular foster placements. You had to go to some of the not so nice establishments. So it gave me a good experience from that age of what it was like to be institutionalized. So when I got out when I was 7, I didn't last long with the adopted family. I emancipated myself when I was 15, just because we just couldn't get along. I was already broken when I showed up at their doorstep, so there wasn't much they could do. And those times were different, where people didn't understand the psychology of a child sitting in an orphanage from another country. I started obviously at 15, being in New York City. The way to survive was to sort of run the streets. There was only one way to really survive at that age. It was either run the streets or get run over. So that's when I started to live in the criminal aspect of things. Where
Do you hear how my accent comes out when I get nervous, or when I'm put on the stage? I'm like in front of people. My accent just flies out of me sometimes, and it's not intentional by any means. It's just. And I just heard that when I said over. Like, I'm freaking retarded. I don't know how to use my R's. Retarded.
Crime it was never really something that bothered me because of the environment that I had grown up in. So I was sterile to it didn't bother me going out and, breaking into cars or stealing stuff from stores and stuff of that nature. And that led me down my path to when I was in my mid-20s in Pennsylvania. Down here in Allentown, Pennsylvania, and a friend of mine that I was running with had sold some narcotics to a police officer apparently previously. The police showed up with a no-knock warrant, and they kicked the door down. I was in the apartment at the time. I didn't live there. I didn't sell anything to the cops. The cops didn't even know me, but I was there in that apartment when it got raided. So they wanted to charge me with a conspiracy. My friend that sold to the cops got out in 6 months, and I wound up getting originally 10 years, which then got appealed down to 5.
So how did that happen? So were the cops, they weren't expecting you to be there? Were you on their radar, or was it just like...
Look, dude, I'm not going to pull any punches, but karma is a real mother, and I was doing lots of bad things at the time in Allentown, as being a white kid from New York that's running around Pennsylvania in the ghetto. I was obviously... my face was known enough, but they charged me with conspiracy, and they realized I didn't have the attorney to fight it.
Of course, my face isn't known enough. Look at this ugly mug. You think I was gonna get away with that stuff? It wasn't too hard to put an APB out. But like, looking for the white kid walking around the neighborhood acting like he's a gangster with a massive nose and can't pronounce his R's.
I had a little bit of a juvenile history, and that sort of buried me. So I had to take the plea that was offered. Originally, it was 10 years. They were going to charge us all with the RICO Act originally. Like, dude, it was 3 grams of cocaine. Yes, sir. Look it up. So 1994 is when they charged me. 1995 is when they caught me because I did take off. Once I knew that I was in deep trouble, I bailed out. I took off a little bit, made my life worse, made my case worse by fleeing. They finally caught up with me in 95. They sentenced me to a total of 5 years then. I wound up getting out in 2000.
Where did you serve your time then?
See, this is the old school stretch. So 94, you gotta remember, was right after the Camp Hill riots, and that's where everybody had to go. Everybody through the whole state had to go to Camp Hill. Gradeford on one side, or it was another place in Pittsburgh on the other, but then you had to go through Camp Hill, and then you got sent to prison. So I went through Gradeford for a couple weeks. Totally terrifying. I mean, the biggest steel gates you ever saw. Guards and inmates screaming at you. I remember walking into Gradeford. This is a guy that had no experience in any state prison whatsoever.
How old were you at this point in time?
Maybe 24, 25, somewhere. Too young to know better. I meet this nurse, and a nurse, it looks nice. So I'm like, yeah, we all have to go to the nurse to get our blood done and stuff like that. So I'm waiting, actually, because I'm like, wow, a nice face. Everything else in here is terrifying. I'm waiting to go and get my browns. And this nurse sits me down, and she has a guard grab me by my arm. They hold my arm down, and she stabs me like it's a knife with a hyper needle to get my blood. And then she asks me as she's drawing my blood, she's like, where do you want your body sent? And I'm like, excuse me? She's like, where do you want your body sent when you're dead? We got to know where you want to have it buried here on grounds. You want to have it, family going to pick you up because you're not going to make it past today. That's what she said to me.
What?
So, I'm ready to poop my pants, dude. I'm from New York. So She got me good. But really what the cause of that was she was trying to wake me up because I'm laughing, giggling. You know, I got my street clothes on, hanging out with the homies in the bullpen, and she's really looking at me thinking, dude, you don't have any idea what you're walking into right now. And it was literally the most terrifying experience of my entire life. How I survived it, I don't know. I can't tell you today how I survived it, but I did.
So you did all told 5 years, you said?
Yeah, I was sentenced to. I got a sentence originally. The judge, when she sentenced me, she said, "You know what? You're from New York. You're down here in Allentown. You're causing trouble. So I'm going to give you the maximum sentence possible, which was 5 to 10 years." The conspiracy was 2 different conspiracy charges. I got the one conspiracy charge dismissed, and the other one I got it appealed down. I wound up getting a 2.5 to 5 year sentence, which I wound up doing. I only had a few months left by the time they let me go. They gave a couple months of parole. Out of Frackville. That's why I wound up doing the majority of my time was in Frackville.
So I want to come back to when you met Eddie, but before I do that, just to finish out your story, kind of. So when did you? Because obviously you seem like you've turned your life around now. So when did that happen? Was that while you were in prison, after you got out, or?
Yeah, I tell this story to my children because I don't hold things back from anybody, and anybody that asks me, I tell this story too. It was in Camp Hill. Like I said, it was after the riots, so the guards were understandably violent. They had experienced many things in the Camp Hill riots that people don't want to talk about. Nurses and guards being raped, and other inmates raping other inmates. It was hell. But I was in right a couple years afterwards. I got in trouble in the kitchen. They take me to the hole. I figure, they're gonna lock me in a cell for a couple days. As soon as I go into the hole, this big, massive captain, this guy was like 6'8", huge, grabs me by my shirt, pull me in, I'm handcuffed from behind, and they just start beating me. And I never got a beat like that, ever. And I've been beaten, but I never got beat like that. So they dragged my bloody corpse into a cell in Camp Hill, in the hole, and they left me naked, they left me hogtied. They sprayed me down with a freezing cold water hose, and then they opened up the windows in the middle of the winter and turned the air conditioner on and left me to death. I got no food, no water. My ribs are broken for sure. All my fingers were broke. I could feel that because they stepped on with boots when I kept trying to get my balance. And I remember praying, and I said, I made a lot of foxhole prayers in my life. I'll change this. I'll change that. I swear to goodness. But I got a response back. And, I don't know if it was just because I was on the verge of death or it was because I was at that desperation where I finally got to hear it, and I got to hear a response back to me. You turn that thing around. If you walk out of here and you do what you promised me, I promise you that you'll live a prosperous life. And not just a summary of what was being said. Obviously, it was a deeper conversation, but that was the moment where I decided that I can either let this break me. I'm obviously a terrible drug dealer. I'm obviously a terrible criminal. Here I am sitting doing 5 years. Like, I wasn't very good. Or I can turn around and use this experience to. That God's giving me one more chance. Maybe He saved my life by putting me in prison. It probably saved my life. So that's what I did. I turned it ever since that point. I went to college classes. I educated myself. I used the time to correct. That's the part they keep forgetting. It's a correctional system.
It's supposed to be. Yeah.
Right. So we have to self-correct ourselves. And there is a group of people in there that were about that. We're going to try and say, you know what? I may never get out of this prison, but I'm going to live vicariously through you. So I use those type of people, those tutors and those mentors in prison to get me to the point where I am now. Like, it was a miracle. Literally, it was a miracle.
That's great. That's an incredible story. So let's turn back and talk about Eddie Mack. So is that his full name, Eddie Mack, or is that a?
His name is Eddie McDevitt, Edward McDevitt.
Okay.
His DC number AM9709. Yeah, and it's sad that I know that off the top of my head
because that man was also a part of saving my life. As I got close to getting out of Frackville, I got a parole date finally, and I didn't really care that much because I had been there for so long. I only had a few months. I didn't have anywhere to go, so like, what did I care? You know what I mean? Like, nobody waiting for me. So I got in a fight with the Muslim Brotherhood, the leader, the imam of the Muslim Brotherhood in Frackville, and that's pretty much death sentence. Like, those guys are obviously deeply embedded in the prison system, and they put a contract on me, and they wanted me dead in the yard. And Eddie Mack went and squashed that, literally put his own neck on the line, knowing that he has to spend the rest of his life with these people. I'm leaving, but he did it because we became such close friends, and
I spent probably the entire 3 years that I was up in Frackville getting to know Eddie McDevitt as a person. And it's one of the few people that you meet that will own the entire portion of his case. No, oh, was this his fault? Or if this wasn't this, then this would have happened. Like, you always hear that, oh, man, there's innocent people up there. Very few people ever just own it completely and take full responsibility for it. And I did. But when you pull up his case file and you see what happened to Eddie, it's shocking that this happened.
So what is Eddie's background? Can you take us through his case and his life sentence? But how did he end up with
Eddie McDevitt in 1983, when I was 9 years old, went to a bar around the corner from his home. It was a regular pub that he usually visited, and he had some grievances. He was a little, tough guy from South Philly. Like, he liked to, run his mouth a little bit, like any other kid did. So apparently Eddie's father and his off-duty police officer had some issues that Eddie wasn't quite aware of, but Eddie knew the guy didn't like him. They didn't like each other. They go to a bar, they get drunk. One guy invites Eddie out, or Eddie invites the guy out who knows. They go outside and fight. And that's what everybody says, literally in every single witness report. So he goes outside with this guy, they get into a physical fight. Guy winds up falling backwards, splits his skull open on a step, and Eddie gives him a little bit of a 1-2 while he's laying on the ground. So Eddie gets arrested because the guy winds up going. He went into a coma first and then died. Eddie got arrested for it. Originally, he got charged with a manslaughter and $2,000 bail. When it was discovered that he was an off-duty former police officer, they changed the entire charge to first-degree murder. They originally tried to put him on death row, and he wound up getting a life sentence out of it. That was back in 1983.
Hey everybody, taking a quick break here from the show. Wanted to remind you all to check out my man Tyler Colford, aka Crypto Man.
Sorry, I hope you guys are still listening to all that. That was a whole lot to take in. I see I'm over 20 minutes right now, but I didn't want to play the commercial just because it wasn't really nothing to do with me or my channel, and I don't want to cause any infringement problems or copyrights and stuff. So, as you can hear, there was a lot there. A lot of my history, and I'll definitely follow up with a lot of this video. Like I said, my main purpose of doing this video is just to get that podcast out and for you guys to listen to it, and then hopefully feel the same way I do, feel passionate about trying to get Eddie McDevitt out of prison. 37 years is a long time to pay for somebody that got into a fight. I had no intentions when he showed up at the bar to kill somebody, and he had no intentions when he left that bar to kill anybody. He's not a murderer, but he was charged with capital murder and was almost put to death over a fight. And I hate to say it, but if Eddie McDevitt had a different complexion, his case may get a whole lot more attention. But that white privilege card kicked in again for him.
I guess retired police officer or something.
Right.
Former police officer. Then when they found out, they completely changed the charging.
Well, it wasn't that I believe that the responding officers, if you look at the court documentation, because one thing that prison's great for, the law library. You can pull up anybody's case, especially if somebody's been there that long, you can pull up every detail. So I did. And the responding officers knew that was a police officer, was in his wallet. It wasn't like he didn't have identification on him, but they also knew it was a bar fight. So they charged him accordingly. It was a bar fight. The guy got his ass, he wound up, dying off of it. But it wasn't intentional, obviously. He had no intent of walking in there and killing this man. So eventually, I guess the district attorney's office down in Philadelphia decided that that's not good enough. They're going to make him the example in the mid-'80s, and they charged him with first-degree capital murder. So they sought the death penalty.
Jesus.
Yeah.
So
years later, still waiting for somebody to say, "Oops, sorry."
So when you met Eddie in prison, what was his, what's his feeling about serving his life in prison? I mean, how's he dealing with that?
It's literally right in front of me right now. This is a letter from Eddie McDevitt, and I have hundreds of these, and I can show you what happens with Eddie, and I watched it happen while I was there. Eddie needs somebody to keep him grounded, or else the pure anger and he had no acceptance on this life sentence. He still believes that he should be free, and he refuses to admit that he's going to die inside prison. So very, very difficult person to be able to even communicate with, because you don't know where he is that day. And this guy, we used to do track we used to yard in the summer was 2.5 hour shots at one time. You go off for 2.5 hours. This guy would sprint full Forrest Gump style that track for 2.5 hours. Only time he'd ever stop was grab a drink, go right back to the track and do it again. There was that much built up inside, massive, humongous person that is literally trying to contain this beast, so he doesn't give him justification to keep him in there. He has not caught any new charges. He has not done anything that, I mean, you're talking about 36 years in prison, and he's pretty much been a stand-up model prisoner for the most part, minus incidents, obviously.
Mm-hmm. So what is the path to him getting clemency? Assume there's no appeals left, or?
Right. The appeals have been squashed and squandered. There's no appeals left. He has two options left. He can apply for commutation through the governor's office, or he applies for commutation from the president. So those two things is what we're pursuing, because he could write a letter on obviously some weird looking paper and send it off to the governor's office, and it'll be disposed of in the filing cabinet labeled trash bin, where we could be able to write out a proper letter trying to get support from his own community, from people that would be, people that you wouldn't expect him to support, people that would not be expected to support him. Mm-hmm. So there's an officer that I know that owns a bar. I'm not going to drop his name just because, this is something that maybe the other officers were frowned upon, but he's going to write a letter of commutation, a letter of recommendation for commutation to Eddie. And that's a police officer that, this is a charge of an officer being killed at the hands of somebody. So it's very powerful to hear that a police officer that read the case file originally said, no, I'll never write that letter for you, Rick. Came back to me and said, you know what, after I read his file, I totally agree that he's already served his time. His time has been served. He should have been home 25 years ago at the tops. The maximum at that time was 7 to 14 years for manslaughter, first degree. So at worst case scenario, he should have been gone 22 years ago.
Yeah, he served the sentence more than twice. It's ridiculous. When you think about it, being, when I think about growing up and, when I was younger, going to bars, getting rowdy, something like that, it can happen to anybody.
Happens all the time.
Yeah,
it does. It's accidental. People have accidents on a constant basis, and we live with those regrets, obviously. Eddie is super regretful. The family of the police officer has already forgave him 20 years ago because he just kept writing letters over and over again saying, look, I never had any intent, no matter what the newspaper said, I never intended on doing it. But there's another issue there for Eddie. And the other issue is that what if we do get him out? What happens? His family's gone. He has nothing. It's 36 years ago. His dad's dying in a nursing home. His brother has bitten him off, and he has nothing else left. And just mentally, how do we get him back in society and expect him ever to be the same again? There is no Eddie McDevitt from 1983. That guy's dead. And who's responsible then to care for this guy and put him back together again? That's the other part that we're pushing hard to get him out, but at the same time, unfortunately, it's sad to say, the only life he knows is behind those walls. He knows nothing about it. He only spent 10 years free. So
that's really, an indictment of the system. There's so many guys like that in the system that, on all kinds of different charges, on nonviolent drug charges. I just had Rufus Rochelle, who, actually the show's airing today, we're recording this on a Friday, but he did 32 years in prison for, and there was no actual drugs found. It was all ghost dope. Just people testifying against them to get their sentences reduced so they could get their own freedom. And
32 years for drugs.
Yeah, 32 years for drugs. They didn't even find any drugs. It's just all hearsay. It's completely ridiculous. And he comes out, he's an older guy now. And you know what are you supposed to do? How do you?
Right.
It's an insane system. And that's one of the main reasons I do this show. I'm just trying to get people to wake up. And it's a small little corner of the internet, but just trying to get people to wake up.
Please. I do a little bit of work. Like, Frank came home last year, and before he came home, we were working with him, trying to adjust. He did 11 years in. I just met a guy down in South Philly. He did 30 years in. He knew Eddie Mack, actually. They grew up together. He showed me a picture. I didn't even know this guy from a can of paint. I just saw him the other day at that protest I was telling you about. Just that's how God works.
Yeah, that was some crazy shit. I mean, I don't know, probably half of you guys already tuned out on my video, but we're down at Marconi Plaza. We're there for an event. That was the Captain Campione thing, which you guys have seen in my previous videos. And there was a guy that was walking around with a face mask, had his arms covered, had everything covered. The only thing you could see was his eyes, and I thought he was actually Antifa to begin with. He came up and started talking to us. The dude was like 6'7", real big dude. And we started talking a little bit, and he tells me, yeah, I got my face covered and all that good stuff because I'm on parole for life. And I'm like, damn, I didn't even know they had parole for life. Like, that's how ignorant I was. And he's like, I got out after doing 30 years. And I was like, oh, you're from the area? He's like, yeah. I was like, oh, well, 30 years ago, I used to run this fucking town too. Crazy. And he's like, all right, give me some names. So I started dropping some names. Jules, blah, boom. I know this dude. This guy. Tony Santos, blah, blah, blah. I know this guy. And then next thing you know, I talk about Eddie Mack. And the dude knows him. He had pictures of him and Eddie Mack on his cell phone when they were kids. Crazy freaking world, dude. No smaller world could it possibly be. A guy that's been in prison for 36 years, another guy that got out of prison after doing 30 years, and I happened to meet this guy randomly on a corner at 12:30 at night in South Philadelphia after a massive protest. Just, God works in mysterious ways, man.
The guy's got life on parole and did 30 years in prison, knew Eddie McDevitt, they grew up together. And he's even shocked. He's like, what do you mean Eddie's still in? He's like, I thought he was out and like moved to Florida. But it's another one where nobody was there for him, and he almost put himself right back in 30 years of prison time. And he just went, hey, have a great day. Here's your box of stuff. Walk out there and don't violate your parole. Like, how do you do that? Where are we as a society that we don't recognize that part of it has to be addressed? There's massive opportunity to stop people going back in if we just get them at that point where they're looking for the most help they could possibly take is at that time when they walk out of prison and they really don't ever want to go back there ever again. Nobody ever says, oh shit, I want to go back in. No, that doesn't happen.
Yeah, and they have that taste of freedom, and what do I do now? They don't have a driver's license, they don't have clothes, don't have a place to stay.
Do you want me to tell you what happened to me when I got out of prison? I'll give you a real life.
Yeah.
There's a halfway house on Walnut Street in Reading, Pennsylvania that used to be run by a guy named Bill Tillman. Bill Tillman had the place run by a guy named Wade Phillips. Bill Tillman was a complete junkie. Everybody knew that. I knew him back in the day because when I used to run the streets of Reading, he was definitely one of the customers. He was a really tall white guy with a big, he looked like a roll-on deodorant. Exactly what he looked like. So you definitely knew Bill Tillman, right? So literally, if you could put a roll-on deodorant and put a face on it, that was Bill Tillman. White as a ghost.
That's the most ridiculous analogy ever.
Thank you very much. This is me. I'm a cartoonist too, so. And then we had Wade Phillips, who was the director of the halfway house. Wade Phillips was a convicted sex offender that we did time with. We knew that because he was locked up in protective custody. Who Wade Phillips was. He was my director of programming when I walk into my halfway house. The rest of the people that were junkies and sex offenders, I had a guy, when I would go back from work, you have to take a urine test, usually randomly, but at least 3 times a week. And the guy that would take my urine test would try and offer to hold my junk while I took the urine test. He used to follow me every time I go to work, would offer me $20 if he could give me oral sex. And then he would tell if I said anything, call my parole officer and have me violated. The very last day I leave the halfway house after working for 3 months at a crappy-ass job and saving all my money in a bank account because we weren't allowed to have the money. Wade Phillips hands me my bank account and shows I have $1 left in there. They drained the rest of it, took it, and he's like, what are you going to do about it? You're a state prisoner. I'll just violate you and send you back. And I literally went across the desk on him. I punched him dead in his mouth. I waited for my state parole officer to come back and charge me. My state parole officer was like, look, my state parole officer wrote me a check for $200 so I could get a room and stay somewhere because he knew exactly what that halfway house is about. And he's like, man, I'm so sorry that you have to experience that. And he's like, I'm not going to charge you for punching that guy in the face. Like, don't do it anymore. But, yeah, it was just, that shows you, even after you get out, after that point when you get that taste of freedom, it's all entrapment. It's all set up it's a revolving door that they need you back in there because everything is financial guarantees.
Yeah, and you get people, like the people you just mentioned, leeching off the system and just hanging on. And yeah.
What they really do is they send these guys back to prison immediately. These guys go back, and then they may never ever come back out again. They may never be the same. People that had an opportunity once they halfway house experienced that. Whose fault is that then? That's these guys' fault. get priced, and they're going to go after something like that. Like, there's a lot of pitfalls in the system that definitely need to be addressed. That's for sure.
Yeah, I don't know how they fix it. I mean, it's good. There's been sentencing reform a little bit with the First Step Act. There's still a lot of people in prison right now who shouldn't be in prison, as we were just talking about. But that last piece, I mean, if the government can't handle incarcerating people in a way that doesn't, I mean, prisons are a disaster right now. Horrible conditions. You got outbreaks of what is it down in Florida? Florida prison down there. Outbreak of I don't know, something ridiculous. Legionnaires disease or something like that.
Legionnaires disease, bubonic plague.
Yeah. Things that they're not being that could be prevented, easily prevented, and they were treated as beings, but we're not. We're not treated like humans. We're the lowest form of life.
Yeah.
Literally.
Yeah. So I don't know what the answer is. I mean, probably getting the private sector more involved with that transition. Because I mean, a lot of people when they come out, they want to work. They're ready to work. They need an opportunity. And there's businesses, companies out there that'll give felons opportunities.
Of course. That's what I do for a living. I handle people's payrolls and their corporate taxes, and there's incentives to hire a felon. They'll take money off your federal taxes the next year when you submit it. Instead of owing money, you might get money back.
Just aha moment.
Absolutely. It's an incentive. It's in this state in Pennsylvania, the last time I remember was $4,500 in a credit that they get off their federal taxes. Look, this is what I do for a living. You ask any CPA in Pennsylvania. Single mothers, people that are in situations where they were out of work for a while, veterans, they get money off their federal taxes. But absolutely, hiring a felon is a big part of that President Trump's program to try and get people incentivized to hire people who are going to get you back on your federal taxes.
That's good. I did not know that. Wow.
Yeah, and the other part, we
learn something new every day.
We got to incentivize everyone. I get sentenced and then I get out. Like, give me an incentive not to repeat, because right now there isn't much for people. Like, there's no light at the end of the tunnel. My felony is going to be on my record for the rest of my life. I can never own a firearm. Some states you can never vote again. Like, there's a lot of things that they should incentivize it. If I go 7 years, drop that felony off so I don't have to answer that question on the application anymore. I don't want to have to answer the question anymore. I do.
Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on owning a firearm for felons? I mean, my perspective, if you're going to trust someone to come back out into society, obviously there's ways to obtain a firearm illegally. So if somebody wanted to do that, they could. And if you're giving someone back their freedom, saying, here's your freedom, you can get a job, you can start a family, but you can't protect them. You can't protect your own life, your own property.
Appreciate me, bro. I got 4 kids underneath this roof right now. And I won't tell you exactly what happens underneath my roof, but I'll tell you that we're protected for sure. I think that it should be something that if me as an ex-con is making the application for a gun permit and I'm going out and purchasing the gun from a legal store, then obviously I'm doing all the legal things because I know exactly how to get a gun illegally that you would never got it. So that shouldn't be the thing that sends a red flag off. That should be the thing that sends, hey, that's a great, look at that guy. The guy used to be an ex-con, and here he is applying for his gun permit so he can protect his family, carrying his concealed weapon. I'm putting myself on the record as saying I have these things.
Right.
But you're out off the record with a felony? I mean, which way you want it? It doesn't make much sense. What are you asking for?
That's craziness.
Yeah, it's silly.
Anyway, Rick, it's been great getting to talk with you and hearing about Eddie and getting his name out there. Because that's the first step. More people hearing about his case, and so others, because there's a big community of people pushing for clemency, and especially right now with COVID. So, anything else you want to say about Eddie's case, or anything else? Plug anything?
He offered me a plug, and like a retard, I passed off on it, because I wasn't really about plugging myself on this podcast. I was really just trying to use it for a platform to get attention on Eddie. So I felt bad, but should have used the plug because it got a lot of views and a lot of attention on there. Should have plugged that I need money. Send it to me.
A plug or anything like that?
I just want to say that, honestly, for somebody like you, I appreciate what you're doing, because that kind of work is imperative to hear what you think is a small voice is not, because obviously here I am. I heard about you. People in my chapter, people at my drinking club, they heard about you too, and I really do appreciate the work that you're doing, bro. And if there's anything that we can offer, if you want to be able to speak to these guys face to face, the guys that are doing time in prison, that I can offer that connection to you because of what I do for that Pennsylvania Alliance for Justice and Reform. That's my nonprofit that we run to
help long-time prisoners. I didn't want to look for a plug, to be perfectly honest with you, because that's what it's about. But I encourage other people to do the same thing I'm doing. If you know somebody did a stretch of time, don't just welcome them with a bunch of balloons. Like, you want to talk to them 6 months before they get out. Show them how to shake the jail lingo, how to tie, how to do a resume. Before they walk out the door, get them prepared. You know, like, do your part. Like, everybody does their part. I think we can make a big difference.
All right, Rick. Thanks for coming on the show. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, young man. God bless.
Thank you for listening to today's show. Another great episode of Felony Friday. As you know, Felony Friday is one of 3 shows we have here on the Lions of Liberty.
Sorry. See, I was actually working at the same time. I was going to pause that video a lot more, but as you see, it's 40 minutes already, and that podcast was like 30 minutes. So I hope you enjoy listening to that podcast. I apologize for the length of it, but there was a big message that needed to be delivered there, and the podcast host was definitely interested in my story more than I thought he was going to be. I thought really that was going to be more about Eddie McDevitt. Not that I'm saying he didn't cover Eddie McDevitt in every aspect, and I do appreciate that. He gave me every opportunity to discuss his case and to discuss the option that's available to Eddie, which is the only option he has right now. A man that has done 37 years in prison, a man that has been, for all intents and purposes, during his time in prison, he has done exceptionally well for being somebody that should have been out 32 years ago. What I worry about now is that Eddie is so far gone that even bringing him back out into society, he won't have a place out here anymore because, you know, in his mind, he's never leaving prison. So even if he does leave prison, he may never leave prison. Sad, but I've seen it happen before. I remember a gentleman that was, I think he did 23 years. Don't quote me on that. It was over 20 years, though, he did in prison. And everybody was saying goodbye to him, and he was, like, really, really quiet, very subtle, which most people are. They don't really know how to celebrate the fact that you're leaving while everybody else is staying. But we heard that night that he actually got arrested down the street before he ever got onto the bus that they provide for you to get out of town. He went to a bar, got drunk, assaulted somebody, and waited for the police to show up and take him back to prison. When I left, he was still there, and I'm assuming that he's going to be there forever because he was just more comfortable there. He had done 20-something years in prison. He knew nothing on the outside anymore. He knew nobody on the outside. Nobody was waiting for him. I can't say that's totally the case for Eddie, but the majority of his family is gone. His brother apparently is an asshole, and his dad is in a nursing home. So, you know, there's not a lot of time left if he's going to reunite with his father. I think his father's an asshole too, but I don't remember exactly what his relationship is with him. But yeah, it's going to be people like us, people like me and my buddy Frankie that are going to be able to help out Eddie when he gets out. And right now I have faith. I do. I have faith that, you know, there's a reason why this all happened and a reason why it happened so fast. And to have his application expedited like that is very rare. You don't see that, especially for a state prisoner, somebody that was sentenced to life. You don't usually see that happen. So please share this message out. Please share out the message for Eddie McDevitt, free Eddie McDevitt, AM, A as in Apple, M as in Mary, 9709. He's in SCI Dallas, although you can't write him directly. You have to write the letter sent to a Florida mail center. You can find that address on the Department of Corrections site on Pennsylvania. Send him a letter. Tell him that you support him, that you heard the podcast, and that you're standing by him. And write a letter of recommendation for commutation to Governor Wolf, to whoever you like. If you want, just send it to me. I will put my address in the comment section if you guys want. And I'll take all those letters and put them all together. So when Eddie has his hearing, the more community support he gets, the better. This is your friendly voice, Dick Schwetz, doing an update on my Thinking with Your Dick podcast. Thank you very much for tuning in to my channel, and I'll see you guys next time.